Hello and welcome to the Lost Boys to Found Fathers podcast. I'm Will Haycox, and joining me is my co-host Gabe O'Sullivan. We're men who've suffered the loss of a child, and through this production we desire to offer encouragement, strength, and hope to our fellow brothers who've traveled the same journey. Morning, Gabe.
Good morning, Will. Nice to see you again, buddy. It's been a couple weeks.
It's been a little while.
So we are recording on location here. I guess we're always on location because we don't have like a set location other than my office.
Nice.
We don't have our studio, but
maybe if one of you generous listeners out there wants to donate, a few like tens of thousands of dollars, we can build a location.
That's true. But
Impact's a little unlikely. But
Impact Sports, they've got a studio.
That's true.
In their office that he said we could start using, so we might take him up on that. If he can give me like the keys and his code, right, to get into his office.
Be neat.
He's got like soundproofing equipment and stuff in there too. It's pretty awesome. So we'll do that in the next couple of weeks for sure. But
for today,
here in the backyard.
We're actually on. For those of you listening to us on Podbean or whatever podcast, we're trying out the YouTube thing this week. Gabe got us a camera and a cool setup over here. So we'll wave. I know you're not supposed to look at the camera, but we'll say hey real quick to the YouTube guys and let them enjoy Gabe's beautiful backyard here. But yeah, Gabe, I'll let you jump into it. I had a crazy week with work and everything else, and so Gabe did some notes this week for us, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he's bringing.
Yeah, man. So coming off of last episode, we were doing our fun pod, as we called it. We were just talking nonsense and talking about funny stuff that that we thought was funny, and I liked how I think you said at the very end of it, like, we'll be funny by proxy, just talk about other people's funny stuff, and that way the pressure's not on us, right? So that was a good idea. But what I thought about coming off of that was like, we do need time to rest and recharge. We did that episode because we felt like there needed to be a break in the heaviness of things that we were discussing. And so coming off that, I started thinking the other day, I was like, it's appropriate to have times to rest. It's appropriate to have times to reset. I think that's why even, man, if you look in the Bible, like God, he gave us a day, right, in the week, which would be the Lord's Day, for us to rest and to not work, ideally, and to have a time that we can just reset for the week, chill, get ready for the next week coming, and focus on him. Like, that's what that day is about. And it's not legalistic, but it is something that God blessed us with. And so you look back even in what was it, like the Middle Ages, some king over in Europe, right? He decided that he didn't think his people were being productive enough, and so he went from a 7-day week to a 9-day week. And so he wouldn't give his people and his horses and his and his animals and his land, he wouldn't give it a rest until after 9 days. He would give them a break. Then they go another 9 days. What they found was that the people started like wearing out, animals started dying because they were overworked, and even the land wasn't producing because it was just getting worked too hard. And so again, look in the Bible, Old Testament, what was it, every 7 years God would say, hey, let the land lay fallow or something, not fallow, some words, that's the word, where he was like, just don't mess with it, so prepare for yourself enough of a store, so that way for that 1 year you don't have to work your land, okay, as far as like tilling and planting and that kind of thing. And so I think that it's important for us to make sure that we have those times of rest and recovery built into our daily and weekly schedule, definitely monthly schedule, yearly schedule, so that way we can recharge. And that's really important, I think, when we're going through a very stressful situation or when our life is in a stressful time. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We've got a couple scriptures from a cool blog that I found called Just Between Us. It was like a little devotion thing, and so that I'll give them a little shout out, justbetweenus.com, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. Will, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say before we jump into the meat of this, I guess just flesh out a little bit of why this is important. And you mentioned there, even God took a day of rest after the Sabbath, after he created the earth and the animals and everything that's in it. And I think, it doesn't really. I've had some cool conversations with a friend of mine that's not a believer this week, and we've kind of gone over a lot of foundational Christian ideas, and I don't think we see from the Bible that like God rested on the seventh day because he was tired. Like, God's an omnipotent being. He had all power. At this time, he didn't like snap his fingers, create everything, and then God's worn out. God has to recharge. I think, like you said, you gave the example of that king in the Middle Ages, and I've never heard of that. So you're beating me on the history today. So
history major.
Yeah. But I think, like you said, even the land seemed to rebel from that overwork. Yeah. And I think, and this is a will trying to interpret what I know about the Bible, not like thus saith the Lord here, but I think the Lord did that to model to us that you do need rest. And the Sabbath through the Old Testament, New Testament, and even should have been to today, probably you could say was to a great extent, at least to our grandparents' generation and maybe their parents, was a day that was for rest, and it was like to, for your body to rest, for your soul to rest, but it was a day to give praise to God, to take time aside, for the Christian, Southern Baptist, most evangelical beliefs. That's the day we worship on, and so we take a break, worship God, thank Him for everything He's given us, and dedicate that day to Him, and kind of reset. DJ, our pastor, talks about that. Like, you're here Sunday morning, you're resetting, you're priming. You're not supposed to use the sermon on Sunday mornings as this is all the God I get for the week, and then I go out into the hard secular world out there, and I'm just running low all week, and then I have to come back next Sunday and get recharged. You should be worshiping all week, but I think that's the idea. I just wanted to kind of give there, that this isn't a random thing where God's like, I'm tired, I'm going to take a break. But I think what we see in the Bible is God just wanted to model to us that humans need a break, that we are weak, and like you say, if we push ourselves, we're going to get stressed out, and specifically in times of grief. If you push yourself 7 days a week, you're working Monday through Friday, maybe you're even working on Saturday, you're doing all your chores on Sunday, you're just running, go, you don't get a chance to stop and rest. I think you're going to see, just like the example you gave from the Middle Ages, you're going to burn out, you're going to get sick, you're going to ruin relationships you have because you're not taking time to enjoy those relationships. And I just think, to me, that seems like it's a pretty crucial idea, maybe, that we miss a lot of times in our culture because of the capitalism, like go and get it. Like we think of blue laws and stuff like that as like stupid old things that we don't need. It's old Puritan laws where you couldn't buy alcohol on Sundays, and certain things you couldn't do on Sundays, and we've kind of gotten rid of most of that because we're modern now. We don't need that. But I didn't want to derail us too much, but just wanted to kind of focus on the importance of taking that day to rest.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it's crucial. And I read a book it was several years ago now, but the book was on high achievers, and one thing that it mentioned was that those that we look at in industry or athletics, that's what it was focusing on. So like high performing CEOs, high performing athletes, the whole premise of the book was that they take their time to rest. Like when it's time to work, they work hard, but then they also build in times of rest into their schedule, like for even daily, like as far as taking a 15-minute nap in the middle of the day to recharge, and then obviously taking vacations and taking time throughout the week to get away. So it's not that always pushing is the best thing. Like we push when it's time to push, but we gotta step back and rest too. And again, especially when we're going through a situation like we're talking about in this podcast, you're talking about the loss of a child, or my goodness, like what is more stressful than that? And so we got to make sure that we're building into our lives that time to recharge and to take a step back. And we'll get into this a little bit more later, but also make sure our wives are doing the same thing, because we don't want to just be like, oh, hey, honey, I need my break. You keep doing your thing. You keep pushing forward. I got to go recharge. That's not taking care of her. And so we're going to make sure that we work on that as well. So a couple of scriptures we got alongside this topic here, just to reiterate the point that even Jesus, okay, God in the flesh, because he was in the flesh, we believe he's 100% fully God and 100% fully man at the same time. That's really something that kind of blows your mind. It certainly does mine. But he exhibited this same pattern in his life when he was here on earth. And so one of the scriptures is Matthew 14:22-23, and it says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side of the lake, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. So this is a story after Jesus had, maybe even after he had had the miracle of loaves and fishes or something. I think that's what it was. So he had been teaching and preaching all day, and then he, fed all these 5,000 plus people with this miracle of the bread and the fish, and then it says he decided, man, I gotta have some time to myself, right? So he sent his buddies on across the lake, and then he went up to a mountainside to pray at the end of the day. And so we just see there that Jesus needed some time to be alone, and after he did this huge ministry, right, this day of ministry, he went and was like, okay, now it's time to refill my bucket, right? And I think that's something that that we do. Will, what was an example maybe that you've seen in your life where you've done that before, or felt the need to do it, and maybe you didn't do it?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's hard to find one particular example, but I feel like I don't know. I mean, I guess before you go on a mission trip is one thing for me. You're kind of doing I've been on a few mission trips in my life, or I've been on several mission trips, and not a lot when I was younger. When I wasn't a Christian, it was just kind of like the church thing to do.
Gotcha.
But since I became a Christian, I've gone on some too, and I think the moments that I remember from that, mission trips aren't about rest. They are about working and doing evangelism and helping people, and whatever the particular focus is of that trip. But I feel like when you're working full time, you're doing life, whatever your situation is, you're just in that mode. You're not thinking, I got to stop, take time, and encourage the people around me. You're not thinking, like my client came in and just talked about her best friend died, and so she's broken, and I might need to take an extra 5 minutes and pray with her, and then pray myself afterwards, and kind of build myself up, make sure I am strong in the Lord, so I can encourage someone going through something. And then you go on that mission trip, and you're all psyched up for it, you're ready, you prayed yourself up, and you just try to pour out. I've been on mission trips where it is like an evangelism focus, and I've been on mission trips where it's a service focus, where you're going to serve a population so that they will listen to the missionaries later that are there full time. And I always feel like kind of in the middle of that, if it's a week long trip or whatever, like that third, fourth day, I always feel like I'm worn out from doing, the ministry constantly, but I'm also less, I don't know, I was going to say something better than less tired, but I'm less tired. I feel recharged because there's, I guess that balance between body rest and spirit, soul rest, that you can pour yourself out 16 hours a day in hard work. But if you're on a mission trip like that and you're praying, you're around other believers, you're reading the Bible together, you're doing a quiet time or some sort of study while you're there, you're building yourself up at the same time as you're pouring yourself out. And I just feel like those are the times of my life where I have felt like I'm exhausted. I do need to take a break, but at the same time, you're seeing full-time ministry for people, you and I, that are working outside of the full-time ministry, we get a chance to encourage coworkers and clients and stuff like that. But for me, you get a break for your normal life and you get into a mission trip, and it feels like you're simultaneously exhausted, but you have more energy than you ever had before because of the soul being built up and, you know, really seeing yourself and doing ministry. So I don't know that I answered your question necessarily, but, you know, I think it's a time in my life when I felt exhausted, but I think through the strength of the Holy Spirit, you can carry on and do the right thing and doing the work of the Lord. And, you know, I think Jesus models that too. You know, like he just said, you know, if he's fed the 5,000, you know, he's healed, given sight to the blind, you know, given hearing to the deaf, and his physical body is tired. Like we see, you know, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he is tired. He's praying. He's agonizing over this prayer, knowing what he's about to do and going and being scourged and crucified. But he's pouring into himself by praying and spending time with his Father. And, you know, I think that's a model for us that, like, you know, you can rest in prayer. You can rest in meditation in the Lord. So, yeah.
That's good. And I was thinking of two things right there at the end when you were just talking about that I hadn't watched them all, but the show called The Chosen.
I haven't watched it, but I've heard a lot about
it. Dude, it's amazing. I love it. I've watched, I don't know, a bunch, but not all of them. And one of the episodes was like, it was kind of about the disciples were kind of, I don't know, like, frustrated with one another. They were getting tired, they were getting hungry. They've just been, you know, they've been working hard, right? Traveling a lot, having to set up camp because they don't have a place to stay. They're running low on food, they're running low on money. And so again, obviously there's some, what would you call it, like artistic, you know, leniency here, obviously, to these stories, because they're putting in a lot of extra biblical stuff, but things that would make sense, you know, based on what we read in Scripture. And so then, and Jesus is not, he's not even like, the Jesus character, he's not even in the episode, like, because they're like, oh, he's over there in this tent healing people. And so there's this line that's like a mile long, like Walmart on Black Friday to get some TVs, like waiting to come in and get healed. And so they're fussing and, you know, among themselves and having these arguments. And then at the very end of the episode, like as their arguments come to a head and they're about to start like literally coming to blows with one another, just like brothers, you know, getting angry at each other and getting over each other. And Jesus' character comes and walks, you know, he's done with the day. Everybody's gone. He's healed everybody for that day. And he comes just like looking like he's been in a 12-round bout with Mike Tyson, you know, just so tired and fatigued, barely walking, you know, his feet are swollen, you know, and red, and he just is just super drained. And obviously then the kind of the gravity of the situation of them, they're like, man, we've been sitting here arguing about silly stuff and he's been pouring his life out all day. And so a time like that, it was just a good reminder that he would have been tired. You know, he would have been fatigued. I mean, we read the story of him, you know, getting into a boat in the middle of a storm and just passing out asleep and not even waking up during the middle of the storm because he was so tired, right? So he had to have that time to reset and recharge, and so do we. You know, last thing I'll say about this topic, we'll move on to the next scripture there, but I heard Dr. Charles Stanley, one of his sermons one day on the radio, and he said that years ago he started after a sermon, he's like, I will go back to my office before I go home. He was like, and I get on my knees and I pray and I give that sermon back to the Lord. He's like, and I ask the Lord to fill me up because I've just poured myself out, you know, emotionally, physically, for the past whatever hour, you know, to the people, to his parishioners on the pulpit. And he said that's been really life-changing for me. He's like, because because it rejuvenates me. He was like, but also, he was like, it helps me remember that the focus is on the Lord and not on me. He was like, because I might come out of that pulpit thinking I did a great job today, and I might have a lot of people tell me, man, you did a great job today. He was like, so then it puffs me up with pride. he was like, or I might come out of the pulpit thinking, man, I just laid an egg. I did a terrible job. And then I might have my parishioners tell me, man, you did a terrible job. Like I didn't understand anything you were talking about. That was a bomb of a sermon. He was like, and so I have a chance to either be really high or really low. He was like, and I don't want either. He was like, because I don't want the focus on me. And I think we have that opportunity as well.
Yeah, and I guess to segue from one point to the next there, you can tie these together very easily. Like we're just talking about like the importance of being alone, and the next thing is worshiping the Lord. And I think those two go hand in hand. Not that you have to be alone to worship, because obviously there's the beauty in corporate worship and coming together as an assembly of believers and honoring God in that. But I think it's obviously very easy, especially in a larger church. We go to a church of several thousand members. You can just walk in. You have so much on your mind, like Sunday mornings, at least in our house, is always crazy. So you go in, you kind of shuffle into church. My wife's in the choir, so it's me and my daughter. And it's really hard to center yourself and to calm down, really focus on worship and to really pour that out to the Lord. And, I try, when I come in, I drop Bonnie off at childcare, and I sit and I try to pray, Lord, help me to, my heart to be cleansed of things that aren't necessary right now, and help me to focus on you and to worship you with a full heart, with a thankful heart. Some Sundays that works, and I'm able to really focus, and other Sundays I've got so many things just bombarding me that I really don't feel like I'm worshiping fully. Not that I'm not being honest in it, but I just feel like I'm so distracted, like I'm just singing the words. So all that to say, the importance of worshiping corporately is big. It's a good thing we need to do, but also in this recharge and rest piece, I think worshiping alone is extremely important, because there's not 16 people besides you who can sing or can't sing who are distracting you. You get a chance to just pour out to the Lord your thankfulness for what He's done for you. And
right.
I think that's something we need to take the time to do. So
yeah,
I'll
man,
let you take us to the next verse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to have that time alone to worship. We said that a million times on this podcast. Daily quiet time with the Lord, right? Daily time where you're spending time praying and reading the Word. We talked about the SOAP method or the CAMP method, ways to get into the Word to help you journal through that. And so, take us up on that. Do that. Like, having that daily time with the Lord is a great way to start your day, and also a great way to finish your day. Maybe you're not doing the same, lengthy devotion in the evening as you are in the morning, or vice versa, whichever is your time to go. But at one of those times of the day, it might just be like you're reading a short devotion, just to kind of get your mind rested, for the evening, or prepared for the day. And so, but yeah, the scripture we took there says, Luke 4:16 says, he went up to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. So here we got Jesus, King of the universe, created everything. He is God. People should be coming to him to worship him, but he's actually going to church. It says, as was his custom. So he understood the importance, and he was modeling that behavior for us. Now we need that weekly corporate worship, because we are made for community, right? We're made to pull strength and encouragement from each other, and so that's a part of this. It's not just, hey, I'm gonna go into the woods and take a hike on Sunday to connect with God on my own. Like, even Jesus would go to the synagogue and worship with his fellow believers. So we want to have that time alone with the Lord daily, and then weekly make sure that we're setting apart time to go spend with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see there's several things there, and always want to be careful of not trying to read too much into Scripture that it doesn't say or doesn't directly prescribe. But those last four words there, he does this as was his custom, I think tells us that we don't need to be, if we're faithful believers or trying to be like Christ, we don't need to just show up on Sunday mornings when it's convenient. Like, we need to make it our custom, make it our routine to go and to, just like I said a second ago, to take part in corporate worship with other believers. And that's showing up and singing together and pouring praise out to the Lord, that's listening to a sermon and being built up by the pastor that's placed over you. And there's also that, whatever your church's routine is of Sunday school or small group or life group or whatever they want to call it, whether it's Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday nights, whatever time, I think all of that is worship. All of that honors the Lord, and you're deepening your relationship with the Lord and with each other in that small group setting that you're, if you've got 50 in a Sunday morning, if you've got 6 in a Sunday night small group, I think that's something that, we may not think of small group as worship, but I think that's a part of worshiping the Lord is taking time with other believers to get to know His Word. So I think that may not be directly what this point's getting to, but I think that is also a means of rest to spend time with other believers. Maybe there is some study required to come prepared. I know both you and I, Gabe, lead small groups, and sometimes we do ask those who are in our small group to prepare and read a passage, or if we're going through a book, to read a chapter or something. But I don't think the intent there is necessarily to ask them to spend their entire week studying over it and agonizing over it and getting prepared for a test.
Sure.
But the point of that is that they do a little bit of work through the week so that they can come together and discuss. We're going through 1 John, so we can come together and discuss 1 John and build each other up in the knowledge that we've gleaned over the week of reading that, just so that we can rest and worship in the discussion that we have. And so, not to sidetrack us, but I think that's an important way that we can help others rest is to come prepared so that we can have a good discussion and not just sit back and take in those settings.
I love it, man. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do is we're going to take a break right now. We've got a couple more points that we're going to bring up on our next episode, which will be just part 2 of this discussion on the importance of taking a break, of resting and recharging. And so I want to thank y'all for joining us today on the Lost Boys of Found Fathers podcast. Make sure that you check out my books. My newest one is called Every Little Thing, 6 Small Steps to Perfect Peace. I'm finally remembering the title of it, which is good.
That's nice.
You can find that on Amazon. You can find that also on barnesandnoble.com. And you can also get that on Apple Books. That'll just be digital that way, but you can find it, paperback on the other ways as well. And then certainly the first book called Thy Will Be Done. Put a question mark at the end of that. You can find that on Amazon. Shout out to Celsius Drinks right there. Give the camera a little and shout out to Clemson football. Go yes. Tigers! We're in the middle of football season right now, or just at the beginning. So
and we just lost a bunch of Carolina fans as listeners.
That is true. But hey,
we love you guys too. We don't want you to win, but we love you too.
But we want you to have a great season until November 26th or whatever that is.
That would be great.
Win all the rest of them until that day.
Yeah.
So thank y'all for joining us. Let's not be lost. Let's be found in Him.